Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahabatihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Subhanaka la fahma lana illa ma fahmtana innaka antal jawadul karim. Wa qul rabbi zidni ilma. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. ألم تر إلى الذين خرجوا من ديارهم وهم ألوف حذر الموت فقال لهم الله موتوا ثم أحياهم إن الله لذو فضل على الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون وقاتلوا في سبيل الله واعلموا أن الله سميع عليم صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So yesterday we talked about these ayats and gave a basic translation and related the story of those from Bani Israel who fled from their houses and from their places for the fear of death, because the plague had descended or something of that nature had descended upon them, and so running away from their destiny, they met with their destiny. So you can't run away from the destiny, because destiny is going to catch you wherever you are. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the order that they should die, and we mentioned that two angels perhaps were on the two sides of a huge valley where about 10,000 or more perhaps were, and they all immediately died, and they were brought back to life. And the Prophet Iskil alayhi salam passed by, prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were brought back to life. And in this we see that you cannot run away from the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you can't bring it forward and you cannot bring it back. So your life and death is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot bring it forward a second, you cannot take it back a second. And so we mentioned that this is a prelude to the orders and injunctions regarding jihad fi sabilillah, which is going to require huge sacrifices of life and wealth and resources. And also apparently it looks to be the medium of death. Someone casts himself into the arena of death, whereas death is not going to take place before or after its appointed time. So from this we also find there's some important injunctions and important rules and regulations according to Sharia. Number one, we touched on it already, and that is the divine decree overcomes human planning. So on the one hand, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destines, that's what's going to happen. So we cannot change the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that being the case, so then what? So we don't plan anything? Well, we don't know the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we plan, we have an intention, we have a vision. And a vision is akin to an intention. And intentions, according to intentions, comes the reward and the acceptability of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we make plans, we can plan, we've talked, or we will talk about when we come to the Surah Yusuf. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam made a 14-year plan actually. And so we find this also in the life of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. There's a planning, but we don't depend upon our plans. You know, one of my friends in Karachi, he says, man proposes and Allah disposes. You know, and in the meaning of a hadith, that you plan and in a hadith Qudsi, you plan and I plan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And no plan is going to take place except what I plan. However, since we don't know what is the plan of Allah, we make plans, and we make plans for good actions and good activities. And in doing so, we get reward for them, whether it takes place or whether it doesn't. In any case, so the main injunction is that we have to have this belief, the iman bil qadr, al-iman bil qada wal qadr. So believing in the destiny which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided. Number two, and obviously very well connected to the present day scenario, if the outbreak of an epidemic. So what are the rules and regulations of Sharia according to that? You know, is there social distancing? Is there wearing masks? No, that's not actually mentioned. But quarantine is established through Sharia, and that is illustrated, by the hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, that basically says, if the plague has broken out in a place, those who are in it are not to leave, and those who are out of that place are not to enter. And this actually took place during the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, that during Syria there was a huge plague, and that was not, like COVID. That was the bubonic plague, where people were dropping dead left, right, front, and center. About 20 to 20,000 people died in that plague, which broke out in Syria, broke out in a place called Ammas, which is actually in Palestine. And Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu, among others of illustrious Sahaba and Tabi'een who had passed away in that plague. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was on his way to Syria, and before he got to that area, so the news reached him that actually the plague has broken out in this area. So he called his, the companions, which was his tariqah, his method was he used to always take shura. And so whatever shura took place, so it came to the conclusion that after the narration of Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that he mentioned this hadith. No one else had actually heard this hadith, but Sayyidina Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who related this hadith. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu took the advice of this hadith and ordered the armies to retract their movements, and they went off to another area. In the meantime, Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was the governor of the area at that time of Syria, so he said to Sayyidina Umar, and he was also present in that gathering, "Afiraru min qadrillah ya Umar? Are you running away from the destiny?" So Umar radiallahu ta'ala said, "Nufirru min qadrillah ila qadrillah." We are running away from the destiny of Allah to the destiny of Allah. Whatever happens, it is the destiny of Allah. But since we have this hadith which gives us these clear injunctions, so we're going to act upon that. And so that's exactly what happened. And however, many of the Sahaba actually died in that. And it was a critical moment. There was a change in the whole political atmosphere also, which is a long story. So anyway, there is other injunctions that we want to touch on, inshallah, tomorrow, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. وبه التوفيق وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.